Welcome to episode 13, the last lesson of the schoolhouse. I promise this is on sidechaining, and the intent of this video is to understand how to get our kick to come through the mix. Today's course overview, we'll be going over what is sidechaining, how to do it, and then a couple of considerations for the technique. All right, let's go over what sidechaining is, and it's really simple. Here's a perfect visual example. So this track that you're looking at right here is the entire song, quote unquote, that we made. It's really just a bass loop and drums, but we're going to say that this whole thing is our song, right? And I resampled everything except the drums, which is down here in this like lightish pastel purple. And as you can see, we have these blank spaces on every moment that the kick and clap lands. And that is so that this kick can fit perfectly in there like a puzzle piece, right? And we want to do this because we need to make space in the mix for our kick to fit there. Because if we didn't, all of the low end that you see here in this kick is going to clash with our sub. And that can create a series of problems. It can be super loud and muddy. It could also phase cancel and just get rid of your sub entirely. So we set up a series of audio effects to just cut out these little spaces so that our kick and snare can fit through. Yeah, and that's what sidechaining is. All right, let's go over how to do it. And I have 3 techniques I'm going to show you. So if you went through the bootcamp series and we set up our default template together, it's going to look a lot like this. I have this group called sidechain. That's where we're going to put an audio effect on to do the sidechaining. And the only thing that's outside the sidechain group is our drums, right? So the first way is throwing a utility on. So you just search utility, throw it onto the sidechain group, and you're going to right-click the gain knob and click show automation. Opens up the automation lane for that group. And then you want to visualize your kick up here, because what you're going to do is put a dot in the beginning and at the end of that kick on the automation line, and then a third one in the middle. Click and drag that middle one down to the beginning so you have a ramp, and then hold Option key, and then you can click and bend this line to kind of smooth it out, right? And then we're going to highlight that shape all the way up to the half beat, do Command D to duplicate that shape for every kick. So what this is doing is utility is cutting out all of the gain and volume for this shape so that the kick obviously fits in there like a perfect puzzle piece. The cons to this, though, I will say, is that once you start doing complex kick patterns, you have to draw in more shapes. And if it gets to the point where you're starting to do like drum fills like this, little triplets, well, then you got to go in and then make smaller curves for that. And the problem with this is a lot of ducking that is happening with the sidechain. So much ducking that if we were to play this back, it might just honestly go mute. Yeah, you see that? And then if we put it all with the kick, it might sound like kind of weird. Yeah, you see how it's just like, it doesn't sound clean, right? So this does take like time to polish once you start getting like really complex drum fills. The pros to this, though, is it's a very aggressive solid sidechain. I mean, you're ducking out all of the volume completely for that kick, so you know it's going to work. Here is the visual example that we just went over on what is sidechain. So as you can see, this is utility cutting out all of the gain again so that this kick can fit perfectly right in that space. All right, so let's go to the next option, which is compressor. So you just throw a compressor on and you click this arrow to the left of the title compressor, and then you click the sidechain button to enable the sidechain function, and then you go to audio from kick drop. If you have multiple drums, by the way, like intro drums, build drums, drop drums, I would recommend labeling it in parentheses drop so that when you go to open up this sidechain drop box here, you can just, you know that this is the kick like to your drop. So yeah, now what we're going to do is I'm actually going to delete utility. I don't want to see that shape. We can get out of automation as well. So I'm just going to play this sidechain group, and you'll see a bunch of signals come through here. Oh, this group is on. I am so sorry about that. Let me turn all this off. Okay, let me play this again. You see these gray peaks? Okay, that is our kick signal coming through. And the compressor isn't working because that kick signal isn't passing this blue line, which is the threshold line. So we have to turn this down and play it again. So that kick is now passing the threshold line, and you can see a little bit of ducking there. To get it to duck more, you would just increase your ratio and gain all the way up, and it's going to be cutting the volume out completely now. Let's look. Yeah, so you can see this is like really hard ducking happening. You can adjust the attack and release here as well to polish that shape, like kind of like that curve that we went over in utility. So a very fast attack means the compressor is going to turn on very fast. Like the second the kick signal passes, compressor's like instantly on at 0.01 milliseconds. And then if you want it to come off slowly, you would just increase the release. You see how this arc right here is like a lot longer? Well, that's because we increased the release. So like, let's increase it more for dramatic effect. So that's like extreme ducking on the release. And then if we were to tighten it up, very sharp curve here. So that's what those controls do. I'm just going to put it at stock for now. And if we go look at the visual example for compressor, this is what it looks like. So you can see here that the compressor is coming off on that release, right? It's starting to release off of the sidechain group, and that's why this is ramped up, opposed to utility, where that shape was just doing a very hard like ducking cut of the volume. Compressor is going to just slowly ease that off, which can create a smoother sidechain, especially if your kick is kind of blended like this with a crossfade, and you're kind of like, your kick is like fading out, but then this is the song is like fading back in. You can get it to like smooth out nicely. The pros to compressor is that you're not drawing in any shapes, and as long as any kick signal passes this threshold line, this blue line that we drag down, it will always duck. So it just automatically follows every kick, which is super sweet. And again, you can adjust these parameters to change the curve of that shape as well. The next and the last audio effect we'll be going over is a third-party one called Duck. Looks like this. And this is sweet, by the way, because it does everything that utility can do and compressor can do, but a little bit more. More importantly, this crossover function. So I have it set to 200 hertz, meaning that at 200 hertz, when I raise this low knob, it's going to cut all of the lows from 200 hertz and below. And if I don't drag up the highs, meaning it's going to keep all of my high-end information, which doesn't create a whole lot of pumping action. I'll show you the visual example after this. And then another thing that we can do is increase the amount or lower it to determine like how much sidechain you want to be applied. It comes with a bunch of presets in here and then like designated shapes. Yeah, it does a lot. And then the trigger mode, you can determine whether you want it to repeat on a sequential beat pattern, like every bar or half bar. You can route it to MIDI so that MIDI notes will actually trigger this. I have it set to sidechain right now just so that the kick volume will hit it. Excuse me, I'm burping, as always. So let's go to the visual examples of what Duck looks like. All right, sorry for the jump cut. I got so confused on what my tracks are here to explain to you, but I figured it out. So this is the visual example of Duck in action. Right here, this track that's highlighted is the low end from the track. And as you can see, the sidechain is cutting out all of the low end for this kick to fit through. However, this track down here is all the high end that stayed. And you can see that there's still a bunch of high end landing on that kick and still playing, which I think is neat because it can create like a smoother mix if you use it properly, and it's a less noticeable sidechain. And again, Duck will also follow every kick as long as the kick passes this trigger level, known as like the threshold line. The same thing with this blue line here from compressor. So yeah, that's how you would sidechain. So let's go over considerations on sidechaining. People will ask like, well, what's the best effect to use for sidechaining? Like, what should I use? And I think that's completely dependent on you as an artist, and you see which one you like. And I also think it depends on what genre of music you're making. If you're doing like super strong, aggressive dubstep with blown out subs and a lot of noise, I would try utility first because it's an aggressive sidechain that you need to cut out that aggressive mix like this. Compressor is still great. Again, I think it's probably one of the best out of the three, just because it comes with Ableton and it will automatically follow your kick as long as it passes the threshold line like we went over. And there's a lot of like parameters here that you can fine tune. A lot of people have been using compressor for sidechaining. I know like Subtronics was using it in his early days, probably still does. Some considerations though with compressor is if your attack is too fast or your release is too fast, sometimes you get like undesirable clicking. I didn't get it in this example here. Unfortunately, I can't show you, but you will literally hear it. It will sound like an audio pop, and it will be like not even that small. Like, let me like show you how small this will be. It'll be like this small. You will literally get a little bit of a popping sound that is about this size, and it will look weird. and it'll just happen every time the compressor turns on too fast or releases too fast. Sometimes it will do it with like other weird things. It's a little finicky, so that's something to look out for. What else is there? Yeah, Duck. I think I kind of went over Duck pretty well. Third-party plugins that do side chaining like this and ShaperPox are great. I think they're a great investment if you do it early and you start to learn this machine, because this can do what utility does and compressor does, but a little bit more. I don't remember how much this was. I got it with the Devious Machines pack, which looks like this, by the way. I'll just quickly showcase this. They got Duck, this thing called Infiltrator, a pitch monster, and a texture VST. Like, they're actually really good machines. So I would check out Devious Machines after this if you're curious. What other considerations are there? Yeah, once you got your sidechain set up, what I would recommend is resampling your sounds to make sure that it's working. And the way that you would do that is you would just solo your sidechain group with your sidechain on and everything. And when you resample it to a track, it should look something like this, where that sidechain is working here and you can see this space that it's cutting out for your kicking, snares, and claps, right? And then once you see this space, come and bring your kick down and see if it fits in there perfectly like a puzzle piece. You know, if it starts to bleed in this much, well, then you know, like, that you need to increase the release or make your sidechain shape bigger because your kick is starting to overlap into your song. Like, if this much kick is overlapping into your bass, that's an issue. You don't need that much overlap. However, like this much overlap, as you can see here, that's fine. Like, that's not really going to be that noticeable in your mix. And if it does, that's kind of bizarre. It might. I won't say that it won't ever, but yeah, you want the majority, the overwhelming majority of your kick to be fitting in this empty space, like nice puzzle piece. I believe that's it. So yeah, thank you for hanging around for the last lesson. This is huge. Make sure that you're sidechaining properly so that you can properly hear your kicks, claps, and snares come through the mix, and they're nice, strong, and impactful. All right, we did it. We just went over sidechaining and the last lesson to the schoolhouse. Today we went over, well, what is sidechaining, and it's just creating space for that kick, snare, and clap to come through the mix, utilizing either the utility compressor or a third-party plugin. And then I showed you how to sidechain with the utility. You're just drawing in an automation on that gain knob and then putting it for every kick. With the compressor, you just have to make sure that the kick signal is passing that threshold line and then fine-tune with attack release. Make sure that your ratio is all the way up to infinity, and then you're just moving the gain knob to determine how much gain you want, well, removed from your sidechain group. And then the third-party plugin, Duck, definitely check out Devious Machines. I think they're great. And a third-party plugin like that allows you to determine what frequencies you want to remove out of your sidechain group. And then we went over some considerations. Try to avoid clicking and pumping actions that happen with sidechain. If you have clicking, it's because your parameters are set too extreme on your compressor, or maybe it's just being overloaded. If you get this weird like pumping action, that might just be that your sidechain is like too strong and you might need to kind of dial it back a little bit and fine tune it. And then the overall why as to why we sidechain is just to have a really nice, like, impactful drum kit that comes through the mix. And if you don't have proper sidechaining, the low end of your kick is going to clash with that sub. And like I said, it's going to phase reinforce and get super muddy and blown out, or it's going to phase cancel and get rid of your sub. And then you lose a bunch of energy. So thank you for sticking around on the last lesson. I'll catch you over at the graduation.